But you're on my left from the cameras. That was good.
Hello, everyone. May I have your attention, please? The press conference is about to begin. My name is Karen Bronsard, and I'm Director of Intergovernmental Affairs at Natural Resources Canada, and I'll be your MC today. I would like to welcome everyone to the press conference to conclude the 2024 Energy and Mines Ministers Conference, or EMMC, in person or virtually on Zoom. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, and a big thanks to the Government of Alberta for their hospitality. The purpose of this press conference is to give you an update on the productive discussions that happened over the past 3 days at EMMC. We will begin with remarks by all three ministers, followed by a question and answer period. Bonjour à tous. La conférence de presse est sur le point de commencer. Je m'appelle Karen Bronsard. Je suis directrice des affaires intergouvernementales à Ressources naturelles Canada et je serai votre maître de cérémonie. Tout d'abord, j'aimerais souhaiter la bienvenue à tous les invités et représentants des médias à la conférence de presse pour conclure la conférence des ministres de l'Énergie et des Mines 2024, ou CMEM, en personne ou sur Zoom. Je vous remercie d'avoir pris le temps de vous joindre à nous aujourd'hui et un grand merci au gouvernement de l'Alberta pour son hospitalité. Le but de cette conférence de presse est de vous donner une mise à jour sur les discussions productives qui ont eu lieu au cours des 3 derniers jours à la CMEM. Nous commencerons par les remarques des 3 ministres, suivies d'une période de questions et réponses. J'aimerais souhaiter la bienvenue à l'honorable Jonathan Wilkinson, ministre de l'Énergie et des Ressources naturelles du Canada. I would like to welcome the Honourable Jonathan Wilkinson, Canada's Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, to speak.
Thank you very much. Do I need to turn this on? It's automatically. All right, sounds good. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est un plaisir d'être ici aujourd'hui. I would just like to begin by acknowledging that this event is taking place on the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda. And to note that the city of Calgary is also situated on the homeland of the Métis. We talk a lot about climate change these days for obvious reasons. Climate change is altering our world in a myriad of harmful ways. At the same time, it is also rapidly transforming the global economy and global finance in ways that are creating enormous economic opportunity for those who approach the transition to a lower carbon future in a thoughtful, determined, and focused manner. The global energy transition is both an environmental imperative to protect the planet for future generations and an economic opportunity on a scale similar to the Industrial Revolution. Increasingly, governments around the world are looking to seize these economic opportunities. We see that in the United States with the Inflation Reduction Act. We see it in Europe. We see it in Japan. We see it in South Korea. But of course, we also see it in competitor countries like China, which has been moving very aggressively to seize economic opportunities. China is now the #1 developer and the #1 deployer of renewable energy technology. It is one of the top developers and manufacturers of electric vehicles and the #1 deployer, and it controls many critical minerals value chains around the world. That is not by chance. Au Canada, nous avons un plan pour saisir les opportunités économiques dans des secteurs nouveaux et en pleine expansion, tels que les minéraux critiques et leur traitement, la fabrication de batteries, les biocarburants, le nucléaire, l'hydrogène, le captage et le stockage du carbone, etc. In the past week alone, as energy and mining ministers were meeting, there were a number of exciting developments unfolding, companies moving quickly to capitalize on the new investment tax credits. Shell announced it would use the carbon capture, utilization, and storage tax credit to move ahead with projects in Alberta that will capture up to 650,000 tons of carbon dioxide annually. Walmart added a hydrogen fuel cell electric semi-truck to its fleet with the Clean Hydrogen Investment Tax Credit. I had the opportunity to announce a number of exciting investments here in Alberta of $11 million on a number of companies focused on very exciting technologies in the pyrolysis space for the production of hydrogen from natural gas. The Canada Infrastructure Bank announced investments of almost $300 million in new Alberta electricity transmission line, which will unlock capacity for new renewable energy sources like wind and solar and help bring down energy bills. And my colleague who oversees Prairie Scan, Minister Vandell, announced $22 million for Alberta companies to seize opportunities in the clean tech space, including $10 million per Alberta Innovates for the work that they are doing on bitumen beyond combustion. These announcements are a testament to Alberta's potential as the world rapidly moves towards cleaner sources of energy. This week, Canada's Energy and Mines ministers met in Calgary to discuss how we can work together effectively to seize economic opportunities in every province and territory in Canada. During the meeting, we discussed economic reconciliation with Indigenous peoples and certainly talked a lot about Indigenous loan guarantees, of which Alberta was the first to move in that direction, and the federal government followed suit in the recent budget. We talked about getting projects built in a timely way, that we need to make our regulatory and permitting processes more efficient, and we need to align them more effectively between federal and provincial levels. We talked about attracting investment, particularly in the areas of critical minerals, and have engaged a conversation moving forward about the things that we need to do from a tax perspective to ensure that we are actually putting in place the measures that are needed to do so. We are focused on accelerating critical minerals development and talking about electricity and the need to ensure that we are moving forward with a grid in Alberta and in every province that will be reliable, that will be affordable, and ultimately that will be non-emitting. Les discussions de ces 3 derniers jours se sont déroulées dans un esprit de collaboration, ce que les Canadiens pratiquent. Nous avons tous des discussions ont porté à trouver des voies de coopération communes pour les atteindre. Seizing the economic opportunity ahead is a race, and in order for Canada to win, decisions on clean growth projects need to happen more quickly to attract sustained and significant investments. We all agreed on that this week. I would note that less than 2 weeks ago, Minister O'Regan and I had the privilege on behalf of our colleagues in the Ministerial Working Group on Regulatory Efficiency to release Building Canada's Clean Future, an action plan to modernize federal regulatory and permitting processes to get good projects built faster. The action plan proposes concrete steps at the federal level to make current processes more efficient by clarifying and reducing timelines, mitigating inefficiencies, reducing duplication, and improving engagement. Today, I am announcing a new cabinet directive on regulatory and permitting efficiency for clean growth projects, which is a deliverable out of this plan. At its core, the cabinet directive will get clean growth projects built faster by providing specific direction from the Prime Minister and Cabinet to federal officials and organs across the government to streamline processes and to make good approvals faster. The directive will establish a mandate for the Privy Council's Office on Clean Growth. It will stand up a Deputy Minister's Regulatory Efficiency Council, chaired by Paul Haluka, currently the Deputy Secretary to the Cabinet on Clean Growth. This council will be required to give regular updates to Minister O'Regan and the Ministerial Working Group. The Cabinet Directive also outlined 5 practical and achievable steps: establishing a permitting coordination function within the Privy Council Office with a direct line to the Prime Minister and Minister O'Regan in his capacity as Chair of the Working Group; tracking project progress through a public dashboard to enhance transparency; developing permitting plans and coordinate activities across federal entities; setting federal targets of 2 years for permits and no more than 5 years for impact assessments plus permits and 3 years for the review of nuclear projects; and lastly, establishing an enhanced Crown consultation coordination function to ensure effective coordination and efficient coordination of consultations with Indigenous communities. Tout cela contribuera à attirer de nouveaux investissements pour créer des avantages d'opportunité, ce qui augmentera la productivité et la compétitivité du Canada. As I said earlier, having a comprehensive plan to address climate change and seize the economic opportunities that will be enabled through the energy transition is critically important environmentally and economically. It is important for all of our governments. As I noted, our discussions over the past few days have been constructive and collaborative. I believe that we are in agreement on the need for better alignment and collaboration that will enable us to drive job creation in every province and territory in this beautiful country. I would want to thank again my colleagues who are sitting here for hosting this meeting, which I said to the rest of the group was probably the best organized federal, provincial, territorial ministers. I'm going to get myself in trouble with other provinces, but that I have been fortunate to be part of. Nous y parviendrons. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Thank you. I would now like to introduce the Honorable Brian Jean, Alberta's Minister of Energy and Minerals, to speak. J'aimerais maintenant donner la parole au ministre de l'Énergie et des Minéraux de l'Alberta, l'honorable Brian Jean.
Thank you, and thank you, Calgary. I want to begin by saying it's been a pleasure to have all the delegates of the conference here in Alberta. I hope the experience was as valuable to all of them as it was for us. We've had an incredible time and learned a lot. We have had the opportunity to have some good conversations about building cross-Canada approaches for attracting global capital for our energy and electricity industries, for finding ways to develop Canada's abundant mineral resources, for creating the supply chain infrastructure that will allow us to develop and export energy and minerals to the world. Some of these topics, like attracting capital and promoting mineral developments, are ones that are continuing long-term conversations that take planning. Some new things that came out of our discussions included how to develop road, electrification, and energy infrastructure in the territories and in the northern parts of our provinces. Very important to the people. These are very useful, productive conversations to have. Not all of our conversations were places of broad agreement, however, with our federal counterparts. Ontario, for instance, raised the issue of the consumer carbon tax and its impact on affordability for all Canadians. Alberta raised the issues that Bill C-59's energy censorship have put in the way of investors and developing energy and mineral projects and the technologies that we want to decarbonize. The Competition Bureau has announced consultations on C-59, and it's our sincere hope that Minister Wilkinson has heard this concern from all of us, and that the federal government will provide clear direction to the Competition Bureau to set up a system that will not be abused to stop energy and mineral development. C-59, as it passed Parliament, is set to be abused. Companies and trade associations are already terrified of endless legal expenses when they have to defend themselves from legal warfare coming from anti-development pressure groups. If we don't find ways to move forward together, we are all at a competitive disadvantage with other countries with similar resources. With meaningful consultations and conversations such as these, there is real potential to capitalize on our incredibly rich resources, which in turn will benefit all Canadians. The meetings at this conference were very productive and useful. Everyone approached these challenges with a hope to work together and to prosper together. We will continue to work together to encourage investment and projects that benefit all Canadians. We want to do everything possible to support our industry partners, explore and capitalize on opportunities from BC to Newfoundland and all points north and in between. I think this was very productive and a very productive opportunity for the future, and I look forward to our next opportunity to get together. But I look forward to seeing action as a result of this meeting even more, and I do believe we will see action. I want to thank all of my colleagues for making this trip to our great province, and thank my good friend Minister Neudorf for hosting it with me. I would really encourage everybody to get out to the Stampede and enjoy Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci. I would now like to introduce the Honorable Nathan Neudorf, Alberta's Minister of Affordability and Utilities. J'aimerais maintenant donner la parole au ministre de l'Abordabilité et des Services publics de l'Alberta, l'honorable Nathan Neudorf.
Thank you very much. Not to restate much of what's already been said by my honorable colleagues, I want to thank Minister Wilkinson and all of our provincial colleagues for joining us here in Alberta. Minister Jean's done a tremendous job being the lead co-chair from Alberta to host this great round of conversations. And I think it was very, very evident that we all agreed that there is strength in collaboration amongst all of our provinces and the federal government. There is a significant amount of focus and conversation on increasing our supply chain, our vertical integration, and our productivity in all of our provinces as we meet the challenges around the globe. There's also a focus on increased need for electricity, and specifically a reliable, affordable, and low-emitting electricity, allowing for new technologies to take center stage. Electricity sources and technologies such as energy storage, demand-side management, CCUS, geothermal, hydrogen blending, nuclear power, and more. Alberta has been able to reduce our emissions by 53% since about 2008, and we are continuing to grow as a province, evolving and making critical corrections to our market for a better, more stable market, ready to meet the future demands of the electrification we see within our province and around the globe. I would also like to again thank the contributions from each of the provinces as they shared their regional and local concerns and the conversations that we had there. I do feel that Minister Wilkinson represented our country very well by listening to these concerns and taking them back. We look forward to, as my honourable colleague said, the actions that are going to come out of the conversations that we've had here over the past few days. And again, thank you to the City of Calgary for hosting us, and again, enjoy the Stampede. Yahoo!
Yahoo!
Thank you, merci. We will now turn to the media Q&A portion of the press conference. We will start with questions and answers from the media present on site, and then we will move on to Zoom. If there are any registered media on Zoom, please find the media moderator in the chat section. Please let us know your name and outlet in the chat, and we will put you in the queue for questions. And I now invite the media in the room to approach the microphones and ask questions. Please provide your name and outlet. We will go with one question and one follow-up per person. Nous passons maintenant à la portion questions-réponses de la conférence de presse, débutant avec les médias sur place, suivi de ceux sur Zoom. S'il y a des médias inscrits sur Zoom, veuillez trouver la modératrice des médias dans la section de discussion. Veuillez nous indiquer votre nom et nom de média dans le chat et nous vous mettrons dans la file d'attente pour les questions. J'invite les médias présents dans la salle à s'approcher au micro et de poser vos questions. S'il vous plaît, donnez votre nom et nom de média. Nous procéderons avec une question et un suivi par personne. Oh, please go ahead.
Hi, Chris Farco with the Calgary Herald. This is a question for Minister Jean. Minister Jean, has Alberta's concerns been addressed on federal energy policy that you disagree with? Specifically, I'm thinking Bill C-59, which you just referenced, the CER, and the cap on emissions on the oil and gas industry.
Well, I believe it's been listened to. We have a situation where we have a piece of legislation that's brought forward that is creating a barrier and creating uncertainty and unpredictability. It's going to increase cost, obviously, as it does, and this is a very competitive environment. So, you know, this is an opportunity to have conversations, to deal with it directly, and we have. We've dealt with it directly in relation to Minister Wilkinson, and he'll carry that message back. But we want to make sure that our industry remains competitive, because all Canadians need oil and gas, and making it uncompetitive and taking a situation that people are afraid to speak the truth and to talk about their products, I think is not a good thing for the people of Canada.
Just to follow up, what were your conversations specifically, if there were any, about the emissions cap on the oil and gas industry? And Minister Wilkinson, I don't know that you've had a chance to have this conversation directly with either of the ministers here, but what has your message been to them about what changes the federal government is going to make or might make about the cap?
So maybe I can just broaden it a little bit back to the three different things. I mean, certainly I have heard from the ministers in Alberta. And with respect to C-59, I mean, I think it's entirely legitimate for the sector to be asking for the guidance with respect to methodology, and that is something that the Competition Bureau needs to provide, and it needs to provide it soon so that people actually understand the starting gates. At the end of the day, I think once that's done, this will be perhaps a bit of a different conversation. I would expect that the guidance will be something like that folks simply have to have a good faith basis to believe what they're saying. And assuming that's true, I think the sector probably will calm down, but I certainly believe that we need to provide that guidance, and that's important. On the CER, we did certainly have lots of conversations around electricity. I think where we all agree is that the path forward for the CER and for work on the grid more generally has to be done in a manner that we achieve a grid that is affordable, that is reliable, and that ultimately is non-emitting. And the issue there is trying to find the right landing zone in terms of the pace of change and the nature of the supports that may be provided to do that. And that is something certainly that I am having active conversations with my colleagues in Ottawa, and it was very helpful to have feedback from not only Alberta, but from other provinces that also have thoughts, views, and concerns. And on the emissions cap, I wouldn't say that we spent a lot of time on that. I recognize that the government of Alberta has a strong view on that. At the end of the day, it is part of Canada's climate plan. We do need to find pathways through which we reduce emissions in every sector of the economy, but we need to be thoughtful about that. It is not intended to be a production cap. It is intended to be a tool to reduce emissions. The bulk of those emissions actually come from methane reductions, on something that I don't think there's a huge amount of disagreement with respect to that. And the rest of it largely comes from reductions with respect to pathways. And we are We are all in on working with Pathways on CCUS. We have committed an investment tax credit that will pay for almost half of the capital associated with this project. So recognize, it's important to recognize where we don't agree, and on the cap, we probably don't agree. But I also think that we had some good conversations about how you actually do this, and that you do it in a manner that is thoughtful and actually not simply something that is aimed in a way that's going to actually hurt the Canadian economy. Nobody has an interest in doing that.
And Chris, you're right, we don't agree. We've had some great decisions by the Supreme Court of Canada that have confirmed our position in Alberta, and we believe that this is unconstitutional and is a production cap, and we're going to deal with that where we have to deal with that. But the truth is that we're a family, and we're always going to have disagreements, and that's just the way families are. But we need to move forward together to make our family stronger and better, especially because we have an opportunity to lead the world on this particular file. And if we work together with the provinces, with the territories, and with the federal government, we will.
Thank you. Merci. Next question. Prochaine question.
Yeah, Jeff Jones with the Globe and Mail. For Minister Wilkinson, you talked about the importance of attracting investment for critical minerals, and we've seen that just in the last couple of days with Glencore and Teck. But at the same time, your colleague, Minister Champagne, has made the rules for net benefit reviews much more restrictive than they were before. Is there a risk that that could actually limit the availability of capital for critical minerals projects?
No. And I would say no. I don't think so. So the new formulation of net benefit applies only to critical mining companies that actually have large-scale operations in Canada that are currently Canadian companies. It doesn't affect exploration. It doesn't affect early development. It doesn't affect investments coming into the country to develop critical minerals. But what it says is those companies in Canada that are headquartered in Canada, their head offices are in Canada, their research and development is done in Canada, are important. And it's important to Canada for Canada to have flagship enterprises in an area that is strategic. And so it affects only a very few companies in Canada, and I don't think it will have any impact on investment flows.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merci. At this time, there are no further questions, so we'll give it about 20 more seconds. Il n'y a plus de questions à ce moment. Nous attendrons alors 20 secondes.
Et il n'y a pas les questions en ligne, non?
Non plus.
Ah, OK.
Nobody has questions when we all
Just,
get along.
just one more here. Minister Wilkinson, you talked about trying to accelerate approval of major projects. Can you be specific? Which projects would be eligible? Which projects would not be eligible? And what tangible difference do you think the changes that you've agreed to here will actually make in getting projects forward and getting final investment decisions?
So they are typically larger projects. There is a threshold, but it's, I don't recall exactly what the threshold is off the top of my head, but these are projects in, the hundreds of millions of dollars, so it doesn't affect small projects across the country. And essentially, I would say it will do a whole range of things. Having a central office in the Privy Council office, which is the Prime Minister's department, enables us to ensure that there is much more effective coordination amongst federal departments that may be involved not only in environmental assessments, but often more so even in permitting, to try to ensure that we are driving better coordination at the federal level. I would also say that the commitment to putting forward a dashboard of all of those projects, including the timelines, and a separate dashboard on the specific permits that are required, provides transparency and will be a forcing function on the federal public service and federal politicians to ensure that we actually abide by the types of guidelines around timing that we have put out concurrent with this. The other part of this, though, that I would say is it is extremely important that we work closely with provinces and territories. We both have regulatory and permitting processes. Even where the federal government has no involvement in environmental assessments, we still often have a role in permitting, including things like DFO and the Fisheries Act. We need to find ways to ensure that we are working in lockstep so that we actually are not asking proponents to do things twice and that we are doing things as quickly as we possibly can. And so we are proposing to provinces tools like substitution, which we have done with BC, where the province takes on to do all of the work and the federal government simply supports the province, or cooperation agreements where we identify which pieces each is going to do. So I do think this is going to have a major impact, and it will allow us to actually move forward expeditiously.
And Chris, I'd just like to say it's obvious the federal government listened on this. We've had decades of a dismal investment as a result of some of these barriers, and the devil's in the details, but it's good news indeed, and I'd like to compliment the federal government on this initiative, and let's see what happens, and let's work closely together with them to make sure that we can streamline and make a better investment climate for everyone.
Merci. Next question. Prochaine question.
Radio-Canada, Radio Mamba de Radio-Canada. Monsieur Wilson, je vais juste vous demander une question en français pour savoir le point de vue du gouvernement fédéral si vous regardez ce qui s'est passé dans l'Alberta et l'avenir de l'énergie renouvelable ici en Alberta. Est-ce que, du point de vue du gouvernement fédéral, est-ce que vous voyez que les choses vont bien?
Well, je crois que l'Alberta avait le plus rapide croissance de l'énergie renouvelable de tous les provinces et territoires. Et bien sûr, Nathan et moi, nous avons discuté, et je crois que l'Alberta a beaucoup de plans pour accélérer encore les énergies renouvelables, mais aussi il y a les autres formes d'énergie, et nous avons les conversations sur les choses comme l'hydrogène et les autres choses, mais bien sûr, je crois qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qui vont continuer avec l'énergie renouvelable ici à l'Alberta.
Est-ce que vous êtes satisfait là où l'Alberta est présentement dans son cheminement du stockage de l'énergie, par exemple? Et puis, est-ce que le gouvernement fédéral est satisfait avec tout ce que vous voyez?
Well, je crois que nous avons les conversations sur le secteur d'électricité, mais les autres secteurs d'énergie. Et bien sûr, il y a le travail que nous devons faire à l'avenir pour assurer que nous allons avoir un système, un réseau d'électrique qui est abordable, fiable, mais aussi non émettant. Et je crois qu'il n'y a pas les différences entre Canada et Alberta dans ces sujets, mais je ne sais pas comment on dit, le pace, c'est quelque chose que nous devons continuer de discuter, mais nous avons fait beaucoup de progrès ici et durant les trois jours.
Merci. Thank you. There are no further questions. We'll give it another 10 seconds. Il n'y a plus de questions à ce moment. Nous attendrons 10 secondes. That concludes the event. Thank you very much for participating. For any further questions, please contact NRCan Media Relations. Coordinates will be added to the Zoom chat. Have a great day. L'événement est maintenant terminé. Merci beaucoup d'avoir participé. Veuillez communiquer avec l'unité des relations avec les médias de Ressources naturelles Canada pour les questions supplémentaires. Les coordonnées seront rajoutées dans la section de discussion sur Zoom. Bonne journée à tous.